Hello and welcome back. Episode 2 of this series of Victoria was called The Green-Eyed Monster. So as you'd expect, the theme this week was jealousy. Victoria and Albert had a very passionate relationship in that they were devoted to each other, but they also had their rows. This week we saw how Victoria is scared of becoming a prisoner in the nursery and having to take a back seat to power, and also how she's scared of Albert being better qualified than her to be the monarch, and so he might like to keep her in the nursery. Let's look at why Victoria might feel so inadequate and worried about Albert being better than her or potentially straying to the intelligent Lady Lovelace. As we see, this lady is clearly a highly intellectual and beautiful woman who Albert enjoys talking to at the cultural reception Victoria suggests they put on. But does Victoria have reason to be jealous? We saw Albert got on really well with Lady Lovelace and Charles Babbage and was excited about their analytical engine, which was basically one of the first mechanical computers, so fair enough. And later in the episode, he gives a passionate speech at a Statistical Society dinner about raising funds for the machine and encouraging Britain to be leaders in this field. This is the dinner that Victoria didn't want Albert to go to and then failed to summon him back from. But was Albert right to stay put and not return home, having not been given a particular reason by Victoria? Ultimately, as Lord Melbourne says to Victoria later in the episode, yay, he's back. Albert is interested in science and maths isn't flirting. Albert's not interested in Lady Lovelace, just her mathematical knowledge. Victoria's jealousy seems to come from feeling that both Lady Lovelace and Albert are better educated than her. As we see, she doesn't understand what the geometric ratios refer to and one of the red boxes are, and she doesn't know what pi is when she tries to join in Albert's conversation with Lady Lovelace and Charles Babbage. We also know Victoria feels like she's going to prison when she finds out she's pregnant again. She wants to be a wife, not just a mother. And remember, now's the first time in her life when she gets to really have some independence. Now she's queen, rather than the repressive Kensington system upbringing her mother gave her. We'll talk about later. Lady Lovelace seems to personify Victoria's insecurities in seeming to be an equal to Albert intellectually and free, not stuck in a nursery like Victoria. She doesn't find out Lady Lovelace has children until the end of the episode. However, when she does find out that this lady does have 3 children and believes she would have gotten further in her career if she hadn't had them, and sometimes wishes she'd been born a man, despite this rather big revelation from this lady Victoria's been jealous of, she still seems happy about her pregnancy, just not how soon it is after Vicky. And she does seem to she likes the princess more this week than last week, which is good. Looking at Albert, he wasn't really jealous of Victoria seeking advice from Lord Melbourne. He was just worried that it's politically inappropriate for Victoria to be in contact with a former PM, and this could look badly on her. He wasn't concerned about where she was. When the Duchess was trying to get Albert to tell her where Victoria was, ask her where Victoria was, when she was at Brocket Hall, and make it sound a bit salacious, it wasn't. So Victoria doesn't have to worry about Albert straying, but does fear that he's better qualified than her to be the monarch, and may be happier when Victoria has to take a step back due to childbirth. So she turns to a former PM for advice. But who else does she have to turn to? After all, it is, as they say, lonely at the top. Who does Victoria actually have around her apart from Albert? Her choices of ladies in waiting caused the bedchamber crisis in the last season due to their political allegiances, which caused Robert Peel had to have to step down as Prime Minister and then Lord Melbourne to come back, and it was just a chaos really. So now she has the Duchess this season who's married to a Tory, but also means she doesn't have one of her Whig friends around and can expect her household to be uprooted in a similar fashion in future. Her childhood was fairly controlled by her mother and the Kensington system I referred to earlier. It was a strict and elaborate set of rules designed by her mother and her companion Sir John Conroy for Victoria to live at during her childhood at Kensington Palace. So this results in the poor relationship the two have as now. Also, Victoria was an only child. She didn't have any siblings to play with. And her older brothers, her father's older brothers didn't have any children that survived infancy, hence why she inherited the throne. And her mother didn't want her to associate with any illegitimate children. So Victoria spent most of her childhood playing with dolls and her pet dog Dash. It's very lonely. As for her father, he died when she was only 8 months old, and we saw last season how she didn't like her mother's companion Sir John Conroy and sent him away from court. So she had no positive male fatherly figure in her life. Her uncle Leopold just wants her to have loads of children, preferably male heirs. So that can also explain why Victoria feels like motherhood can be a prison, and she wants to be able to do other things. Although Uncle Leopold did give some useful advice to Prince Albert, in that Albert shouldn't treat an issue with Victoria as a logical problem to be solved, but he should show that he cares for her as a person. Victoria doesn't know about that conversation though. And as for her father-in-law, Albert's father, he's a womanizer, and not particularly interested in Victoria's well-being, other than that she can still produce a male heir. As for Baroness Lazen, her former governess, she now has a major role in the royal household, so she doesn't have much time for Victoria. And so we come to Lord Melbourne. He was Victoria's first Prime Minister and her mentor when she first came to the throne, but it's now politically inappropriate for her to correspond with him, which he knows, even though we do see in the scene in his greenhouse and his letter afterwards that he provides her with the sensible advice that she really needs. About Albert, for a start, that maths isn't flirtatious, and about her great instincts, and whatever trial she endures, she'll always be the sovereign. It was the sort of chat you might associate with a parent and their child. So in that way, it's sad that she can't really rely on him as she would like to. But I think Lord M's right in trying to push her towards her husband instead. Victoria and Albert are supposed to be partners, and it's the sort of relationship that she really wants, especially as we can see Lord M isn't well. So there we have some insight into how crucial Albert really is to Victoria, and therefore how she may be worried about him, as he is her main constant source of support and companionship. And although he might be better educated than Victoria, he's happy to step back and pursue his academic interests and explain things to Victoria, like what pie is, nicely. And he isn't really after her crown. Victoria's got great instincts, as Lord M says, apart from this jealousy bit, and will always be the sovereign. Next week, we'll see how Victoria wants the crown to show it can help the poor, and how successfully that goes. See you next week. Bye!